Hi, everybody. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst, the deep end, late November. Burr. In the Northeast. We'll get caught up on all the big football action of recent days, starting with that flag football game Adam and his family was partaking in last week on Thanksgiving. Of course, we'll talk FFPC playoffs. I love the format so much. I just love the drama. Monday night's game, last night's game was not so loaded with players, but still and I'll tell a story that Adam already knows about he and I last night in a league we're in together. Hope everybody did well. And although I'm seeing a lot on Twitter, a lot of familiar names are talking down about their seasons. We'll get into it. Looking ahead to week 13, if you're in the FFPC playoffs, big waiver week, of course. If you're not, still probably is, like most leagues are still going. So we'll cover that too and talk a little Josh Jacobs. You can't have a fantasy show in 2022 without talking about Josh Jacobs. Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst, powered by Draft Sharks. Welcome. We are the Deep End. So how did your game go?
It was fun. It was fun. It was a good game. The youth of America. We had a turkey bowl. I got picked off by an 11-year-old, which was the highlight of my day. Naturally,
Wrong read or
no. It was just my son wanted a deep ball, and I threw it. It was a slightly underthrown, and the kid made a great play on it. So I made my son run routes for 2 hours when we got home to say, hey, this is how you fight back for the ball. This is how you fight for your quarterback. Okay.
I don't know, everybody. Does that sound like the right amount of accountability? Slightly underthrown. Make
a play for your dad once in a while. Okay. Come on. But no, it was a great time. The kids had fun. It was just such a joy, but it's nice to see them doing it. So I don't have to be sore all day on Thanksgiving anymore.
So I didn't make it. We talked last week.
You did not. No.
Maybe there was a chance of that, but there was a scenario. There was a path, Adam. There was a path, but like the Bills played on Thanksgiving Day, and the week. Let's see. Sunday, I was at Great Wolf Lodge. Niagara Falls, Ontario has a Great Wolf Lodge, and just away from, I want to have my computer and I want to have my phone and I want to have the radio on or the TV on or both. Like I gotta be sort of in my bubble. Not that I have to be, but I've gotten really paranoid if I'm not. Like Sunday before last, I was driving. We played a board game in the morning, and it was the Cleveland Buffalo game. I host the post-game show for the Bills radio network, and I like to be easily in my chair at work by kickoff. But we played this board game, and it dragged on. 11:30 is when the inactives come out, and it was like 11:45, and I didn't have a lunch plan, and I'm just sort of scrambling, and I know, of course, I had checked lineups over and over, but it's still, does anybody else relate to this? Like, it still feels like right up until 1:00 that I had missed something. And so this Sunday, I'm at a water park all morning and in Canada, trying to, getting Wi-Fi and everything. And the Chicago quarterback drama was playing out, and just like, what do I do? So I'm there with 10, family members and relatives, and just sort of, but I didn't have a problem. I just thought maybe I did have a problem and wasn't sure all the way up until it was too late to fix it.
Yeah. And plus you're a score watcher. So you're used to like being able to sit there and watch all the score, which I started to dabble a little bit this week. And it was exhilarating. I was watching my 5K matchup this week, and I was like, I had to change some stuff up because I'm one of those guys on Twitter that's doing my best to stay positive for all of you guys that are doing so well. But it's just been a brutal year, but the 5K is doing well. And so I thought I'd follow that. And that was exciting. It was exciting to do.
I think that's maybe good advice. If you do want to follow your games on Sunday, is to pick your best team.
Sure.
And center on that. And if it's like, for me, that's the Draft Sharks Invitational, and that's a best ball team. So that's more chances of winning. like it's 25 players,
Yeah.
So that might be good. You want to feel good at the end of it. You already know, especially if you're like, I think if you're a parent and like your kids are playing somewhere else in the house and your wife is doing something else and she needs you to move a chaise lounge or something, and you're just watching the Bears and the Jets, you already feel bad about yourself. You can't change that. You're going to feel bad about that.
Right.
But so if in terms within fantasy, at least focus on a team that you like.
Yep.
And not, make it worse.
Absolutely.
Well, we do have some teams and some players to talk about. First, I thought a Martini report was in order. So here we are. We've been on for, not 3 years, but it's our third season being on. And often I'll have a drink over here. I'll get off my radio show at 7.
Yep.
Zip home and then pour something to sort of relax with you. And if anybody cares, often that drink is a martini, but this is the first time you've ever seen one with olives in it.
3 olives.
4 even.
4 olives.
And I like olives, but usually it's just like not worth the trouble. You can see I have no toothpick.
Yep.
A cocktail connoisseur would disapprove of this because there's no toothpick. But I thought in honor, if you can share that screen.
The olives, that's right.
In honor of the olives, who got into the FFPC Football Guys Championship playoff with the 9th most points. I mean, cheers.
Incredible. Deep end olives, that's you. I'm draft guy, naturally, down there, slumming it down there at the 4-hole. And I'm playing against Nick Constantino, the 1 seed of Go Bills, the main event champs from last year. So all 3 of us did this. Do you know? You would know that. When did we do this? Was this random that we got into this, or were the 3 of us messaging during? I don't remember this.
I think Nick. I don't think we talked to Nick about joining, but you and I'm not sure. I got to find out.
Okay.
I bet if we go back into the deep end archives, we can talk about.
Right.
We can find. It might have even been on the show when they do a Football Guys. It was June, I think, Adam. I can find that out actually without changing the screen.
So, but yeah,
June 16th. June 16th.
There you go. It's great to see. Normally we don't want to do this, right? Because we don't want to compete with each other. But here we are. All 3 of us made the playoffs. It's funny. I'm looking. I'm the 4 seed, and I didn't get a chance to tweet out today, but I wanted to tweet out how do you say that you never win fantasy games without actually saying it? And I wanted to post all of my seeds for all the playoffs that I made it in the FFPC. None of them are 1 or 3 seeds. Not a single one. They are all 2s and 4s. It was all on points. Every one of them. It was that type of year. But hey, I'm glad to be in it. And I got a tough matchup with Nick, although I think he's got Najee Harris on this team. And I am crossing my fingers that he doesn't play. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was dramatic last night. Do you want to tell a quick story about you and I interacting through last night with respect to this league, or do you want me to tell it?
Go ahead, tell it.
So I had a pretty light night. I mean, I had done pretty well. I have 7 of these Football Guys teams, and turns out 5 are in the playoffs, 3 are automatic, and our 2 main event teams with Louis G, both were automatic. So I didn't have anything on last night. The closest thing I could find to a sweat was your team. So I beat you in that league this week. And your points thing, if you show that standings page again, it was super close. The guy at 7-5 was 6-5. You were 6-5. Thompson, Credigree, 6-5. So you had 4 6-5 teams, and what was going to happen. So I had it in my head that if anybody in that group could win, they were going to be automatic. It turns out that was wrong because I was that team. Right? Kaz was first on record.
Yep.
Somebody was going to be second on points. That was up in the air. Thompson got it with Jonathan Taylor.
Yep.
Had enough from Jonathan Taylor. So he gets the 2. And I had just sort of blanked that my team was the second record team once I had beaten you, and our game was over on Sunday. So then it was points between the 4 or even maybe 5 teams otherwise. And you had nobody. One guy had Taylor. Credigree had Campbell. Yaga had Najee, Fryermuth, and Pittman. Or is that right?
Something like
Deontay
that.
Johnson, maybe instead of
Okay.
Kittle. Anyway, look how close it ended up. Adam at 37 points, Yaga at 34 points, Credigree, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Yaga. Credigree at 34 points, Thompson at 44 points. It was so tight in there. And end of the night, I don't want to say anything to Adam because I think he's lost because of the record thing. I think the fact that there was going to be 1 points team in my mind meant that he had lost. So I'm not texting Adam. He texts me, I think I got it. I immediately respond, I think you're wrong.
Well,
it's like midnight.
Yeah, it's like midnight. Yeah, exactly. And because I just went through looking at the point, like, oh, I think I'm in. And then I was like, oh no, I forgot about the wins thing. So then I just assumed, and then 12:30 hits and everything rolls over, and I made it. I mean, and I think Nick texted me too. He's like, I think you got in. I'm like, so that's what made me go back and look, and there I was. It was great.
Nick says, I think you got in. You're like, Mike said, I didn't,
And Mike's never wrong about stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I did spend a lot of time on the math. I didn't have any action. So
Yeah.
I'm doing your action and texting him about it. And the whole time I'd forgotten my own team in there. So at whatever time, I mean, it's New Year's Eve or better last night, that night where you want to see everything flip and who you're going to play.
Yeah.
And so I waited up well into the night for that. As soon as I see you with that little number 4, I'm like, Adam, I was wrong. I was so happy to say it. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I needed that.
Yeah, no, it was not. It was nice to get in there. I was sweating out a main event where I missed the playoffs by 1 point. The Colts defense couldn't get me 5 points. 2 sacks in the opening drive. Couldn't get the 5.
Wow.
I know. 2 sacks in the opening drive. Couldn't get the 5 points. Just another back.
What was the play you texted me about?
Yeah, so that was a play where, my Monday night routine, AK Slickster, I'm on Call of Duty playing because I can't handle the prep. Like it gets me, the anxiety is through the roof. So I'm playing Call of Duty, and I've with a bunch of fantasy football buddies, and I got the game out like right next to the screen, so I can do both. And I look over, and a Colts player falls a defender falls at the 15-yard line, like running in for a touchdown. Like, oh my God, did he just catch an interception and he was about to take it back for a score and win me this whole thing? And that's when I texted you. It goes to commercial. While I rewind it, it was the opening kickoff return to the second half. And he takes it all the way back to the 15. And the last guy trips him up and he falls. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's okay. I've got the whole second half to get 1 turnover. And of course, it's Terry Bradshaw out there. Just what hasn't thrown a pick in 3 weeks. The guy's sensational. But
see, that's why I didn't understand your Terry Bradshaw. He threw 1 million interceptions. He threw more interceptions than he threw touchdown passes for his whole career.
I think, was that him or was that Joe Namath? I know Joe Namath did for sure.
It might have been both. Bradshaw, I want to look it up now, but I think Bradshaw was like 1 difference between touchdowns and picks. That's why I didn't get it. Okay. Wow. Well, that's awful. You had a lot of that this year. You're talking about the 2 and 4 seeds, and I think you tweeted today that you had 3 teams that just missed.
Yeah, I had 3 5 seeds. Like 2 of them were 3rd in the league in scoring, and one of them was that one I'm talking about. That was a point out. So it's like, it's like NFL teams, right? It's like the Ravens or the bit, like they're just, you're in every game and it's 1-score games, right? One year you might be 2 and 6, the next year you're going to be 6 and 2 in 1-score game. So that's just it's been like an 0 and 8 or a 1 and 9 season for me this year in 1-score game, but. And that's it. The difference between 1 point. And that's why I encourage everybody, listen to all the podcasts, do all the research you can do, because I missed the playoffs by 1 point. That was any number of 100 decisions throughout the course of the year. You can't just, oh, well, I made a mistake. Or, oh, well, I forgot to pick up a kicker. Or, oh, well, 1 point could cost me $1 million, because that team, I don't know specifically who's on it, but that was a really rock solid team. So yeah, it's 1 point can keep you in or out. And the thing about the FFPC and even the FFWC is just the way that it's structured. The last week you can go from, like, I was a 2 seed in the one that we just showed. I was almost out. You go from a 2 seed, you score 130 points and you're out. Just like that. It's like, it's the way that it's structured was just wild.
I'm guessing you've thought about this maybe a lot. Is there anything about the FFPC playoff format you would change?
Practically, I mean, yeah, there's major things you could do. Like I love the playoff format being like if it was just total points for the league for the next 2 weeks. I know they do that for like their cash leagues, right? So it's like it's victory points to get to the playoffs, and then it's total points.
You would like that more?
I would like that more than this. I would also for the seeding, I would prefer like a record points record maybe, because I just feel like maybe it's because it's just this year where I didn't get any 1 seeds, but I was like, look, if you're the third highest scoring team, man, it's just to not make it, I feel like is just really brutal when a lot of these teams, like you have teams that are, 6th, 7th, 8th scoring. Like you want the best teams to win the money, not the luckiest teams. And I know whenever there's head to head, there's going to be luck involved, but I think there could be there's probably better ways to do it, but this is fine. It's just one of those years where it just didn't work out. Cheers to deep end olives. Running hot, running pure.
I'm excited about the olives. I'm excited about the cherries, but I don't drink Manhattans. My cherries team, we all drafted in Canton, and I'm hoping to fly the flag for that team.
There you go.
In the FPC playoffs too.
Nice.
All right. The story of the fantasy football season, I think, is Josh Jacobs. And in this all important week 12 in FFPC leagues, what a performance, over 300 yards. Rightly, there was a lot of conversation about how most of the industry didn't want Josh Jacobs, dismissed him. I don't want to say all, because there are so many of us, and we're not all watching the rest of us, and it's never everybody. Like somebody would have had a reason. Why would you have advocated for Josh Jacobs? He's really good, I think, is one reason why you would have done that. And that, I think, is a key point. I certainly was not drafting Josh Jacobs, but there's so much structure in, well, what did we have with the Raiders? We had other running backs we'd heard of. We had we played in the Hall of Fame game. We had a coach who had a history of intermingling other running backs. But I've said this before to you. I think the single best factor that gets overlooked is, well, how did it go? How good are these people? And what would you do if you want to make it about that? Because we're always sort of condescending to coaches. Why do you play this guy? Why does Brian Robinson play over Gibson? All the different situations. We think we know more. Fine. You're entitled to that. What would you do in that situation optimally? Jacobs was somebody, think about before last year. Last year's narrative on Jacobs was throw it to him. He's good enough to catch the ball, and you don't have anybody better than that. People mocked the other guys. You could still have done that this year. You could have looked at that the same way. They don't pick up the 5th-year option. Oh, we've had other running backs where they're not going to pick up the 5th-year option, run him into the ground. Derrick Henry for a minute was this guy. They're going to run him into the ground. That could have been said about Jacobs. He can catch it, so what would you do as a coach? That could have been said about Jacobs. Mostly we weren't looking at it that way, and that is the point. The lesson in Jacobs is, how are you looking at the whole picture? Are you looking at the whole picture? So I don't regret being among the many analysts who didn't really draft Jacobs, but I think I understand why it happened.
Yeah, and I will say you're absolutely right in the fact that, like, we can't say there are a lot of analysts out there, and I know for a fact that Matt Schauf spoke very highly of Josh Jacobs and was drafting him at cost often. I remember doing podcasts, live podcasts in studio with me, you, him, and Jared, where he would talk about him, and doing draft shows where he probably drafted him in one of those podathons that we did. And he might even have him in that team that you're competing against.
I'm looking for it. I'm going to go get it.
Yeah, perfect. So Matt Schauf from DraftSharks.com, and he certainly didn't reach out to me to say this. That's not Matt, but I know that Matt was on Josh Jacobs. But yeah, everything you said is correct. I think with Jacobs, when you get like these top running backs, coming from Alabama, all the tools, look great early in his career, kind of a forgotten guy new regime comes in, never really smashed, never really looked elite. And then he just gets out there and everything clicks for him. I also think it's the timing of this too, in a sense where like, if this was week 3, like we'd all be super excited, but I don't think we'd be talking like, oh, how did we all admit like all this other stuff. Again, I have a main event team that's really good that got in with Josh Jacobs on it. Kenneth Walker's on that team. That team's really nice. So I do have a Josh Jacobs share or two, but he certainly wasn't like I think what it is everybody's, if you're doing enough volume, you're going to have Josh Jacobs, but he wasn't a guy that people were necessarily targeting as their mid to late round, like a mid round guy that they had to have. I think it has a lot to do with the build too. Like if you were doing a hero RB build or a zero RB build, he was a target. I don't necessarily think he was a target if you went 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds type deal. So the way that you like to build your roster also too steers you away from certain types of players. So I think that has to do with it as well. But overall, obviously, Josh Jacobs has had a marvelous year.
We'll see if he plays.
Right.
That team you're describing with Jacobs and Walker, I mean, I know you. That must have 2 or 3 great receivers on it. They could have Diggs, Lamb, Adams, Mark Andrews. Like Jalen Hurts or Murray. You're probably really stacked there.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson's on that team.
Jefferson.
Okay. So that team's a nice team.
All right, so yes, you are correct. Here's my game in the semifinals in another FPC league against Matt. And we did a potathon late August. This was an 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern draft. You and I drafted it together. Late behind the curtain, you traded your share of this team for my share of another team,
yes,
which was, above board. So I've been running this thing 10-2, 1 seed against Matt, who is really good. And
this might have been the draft. I remember he goes Connor in the second. I feel like in this, I could be wrong. I mean, I can't remember anything, but I think he might have gone.
I'm going to get it.
Pull it up because I want to know. I want to know how. I think he goes Connor in the second,
and he was on the show.
Yes, live on the show. Yep. So
working.
I mean, Jacobs has been the guy this year. 40 catches on 48 targets. Like he's just been awesome. And that run he had 80. I mean, he's running away from guys. 86-yard touchdown run. There it is. Connor in the second. I can't remember anything, Mike. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But you asked me who Matt Schauf took in the second round of an FBG 6 months ago, 3 months ago. I'm on it. AJ Brown, Waddle, Bateman. That stinks. But Josh Jacobs, bang, there he is.
We're the 3?
We're the
in
3.
That draft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jefferson, Andrews, Higgins, Hall. Hall is
Penny.
Yep, Penny. But Hall was Rashad White though. Woo-hoo-hoo.
What about Pierce quickly going forward?
Yeah. Pierce going forward, that's a great question. I know his schedule isn't great. He's got back-to-back weeks of 8 yards rushing, and I know their O-line has just been really, really bad. But the target volume's there to keep him, I think, startable as an RB2. And I think he's talented enough. It's just what you expect. It's just kind of the fear of having a running back that is more of a grinder or a plotter on a really bad offense. These weeks tend to happen. They happen to be back-to-back weeks, kind of important weeks. But I still think you're probably starting him moving forward unless you have some teams that are really deep at running back.
Josh Jacobs, a huge story. We'll see if he plays this week. That would change things a lot. How about Deshaun Watson being back this week? Speaking of Matt, that team we just showed, we were texting about how we're playing each other. And he said, I know he told you this on the Draft Sharks podcast on Monday. He has to decide between Lamar Jackson and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
One of these 5 FPC teams for me is Lamar Jackson versus Deshaun Watson. How many quarterbacks this week at the Texans would you rank ahead of Watson? Do you know?
Well, I know Draft Sharks has him ranked 10th overall in their quarterback rankings. To me, it's more of How many would I rank over him? I would go Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow, Herbert, Lawrence, Lamar, Gino. I'd probably put him ninth.
Prescott?
I think I'd play him over Prescott just because I only based on is there a revenge narrative? Is there something in there where like Deshaun and that's what makes me almost want to put him a little bit higher is because I kind of want to take out what I saw. I remember us being in Canton when he played and just watching him for the 6 seconds he was in that preseason game when we were at the Expo in Canton. He looked awful. And now he hasn't played in almost 2 years. I mean, it's like now we're in the fantasy playoffs, man. I can't have my quarterback throw up for 8 points. But so maybe that's where Prescott is a little bit safer. But is Fields going to play? If Fields plays, I probably put Fields out of him too, based on just that rushing ability. But
what about Tua?
I think the matchup's hard enough. To me, Deshaun Watson, like, what's he going to do rushing wise? Like, if Deshaun Watson's going to run for 50, then I'm starting to Deshaun Watson.
Me too.
Yeah. What do you think? Because I've got a lot. I've got a team, or I have one team where I've got to decide. Now, I don't think I have these decisions. I've got like Watson and Daniel Jones and Jared Goff on one team, and I think I'm definitely starting Watson. But I feel like what are the odds you think of him just putting up an absolute dud?
I think the odds are better that he smashes than that.
Yeah.
I mean, playing Watson this week, over Jackson or somebody that we've talked about here is ballsy. By the way, shout out Christian Pulisic. Amazing. Let's
go. Oh, speaking of ball, I get it. Ballsy.
What a stud. I mean, I never do revenge narrative, but he's back in that stadium and he's going to be trying to prove a point to the fans, to the organization that he thinks, not the fans, but the team he thinks wronged him. So, I mean, that could go off. Also, Brissett was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, it's a little bit, it could go the other way. Kyler Murray is off this week. I have a team with Murray and Watson, and there's no choice.
Yeah.
Unless I figure something else out on waivers. I don't know, but most of me wants to expect him to be the player he was 2 years ago. He's not too old. He's been practicing. He's practiced for most of this time, even if in Houston he was lining up at safety at the beginning of training camp last year. I don't know. I guess I'm maybe like 70-30 in favor or toward him having a good game than the consensus. So I might not put him any higher than the Draft Sharks guys did, but I don't think I'd put him any lower or much lower. Tua, the matchup, yes, but damn.
I know.
Hill Waddle, it's just so pure Miami. If San Francisco can score, Teron Armstead hurt for Miami is probably bad, but I'm definitely not going hard to try to avoid playing Tua this week. I mean, you got to just trust what you're getting almost every week from Miami.
Yeah. I mean, Tua low end QB1. I think that's the whole thing about Deshaun too. Deshaun, low end QB1. I mean, there aren't going to be many teams that are going to have two of them. Although Deshaun Watson, now if you had Gino or Lamar or any of these guys, you've been sitting on Deshaun, maybe you do have two QB1.
Right. He could be on anybody's roster.
Correct.
He could be within the player profiler with Louis at FFWC. We have Allen and Watson.
Right.
That team's 30th overall. We're like, we'll move to Watson if it helps us win the whole thing. So any team could have Watson.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you've got Allen, obviously, to me, Allen, Mahomes, like all those elite guys, they're safer. They get the higher upside and all that type of stuff. But it helps, like for this game, Deshaun Watson's going to be in Houston. So the weather's going to be not a factor. So like even situations like that, where if you get him paired up with maybe like, I don't know, I'm trying to see who else is in that range. Fields against Green Bay, maybe Chicago, maybe it's gross there. Like maybe, it could be snowing for all we know. So maybe that's a factor. But so yeah, there's different things like that. But Tua, I'm certainly looking to get him in the lineups. I mean, everything's clicking for them. From a NFL Bills narrative. I'd like to see someone challenge them a little bit. I feel like they've just been cute. They've been crushing these teams and playing these teams back with, bad quarterback play. So it'd be nice to see a shootout there for fantasy sake and for NFL Bills sake there. But yeah,
Hey,
so
if they win in San Francisco, watch out.
I know. Watch out is right. Bills need can we get some help? Can someone beat the Chiefs or the Dolphins, please? Come on.
You definitely take one of those this week. One or the other. Cincinnati has the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Lawrence or Watson? Lawrence. At Detroit.
Lawrence. Yep, for sure.
Okay, what's next?
Pickett. Hold on. Pickett or Watson? Pickett against the Falcons.
Watson.
Well, they're next to each other on the rankings, which is why I asked, but I'm clearly Watson there for sure.
Yeah, we're close.
Sure. Okay. So we got we want to talk a little bit about some not so obvious league winners here. I didn't really know what to call it, but I was just looking at the schedule here down the stretch. I wanted to talk about some players that maybe some not so obvious players that can win you the championships. And it might not even be guys that you're questioning to put in the lineup. Because some of these guys are taking a little bit higher. Some of these guys are a little bit lower. But at this point, like the schedule is so big and the matchups and the health and all that type stuff. And one of the things I was looking at was, kind of some running backs and schedules down the stretch of some players that might slide into the starting lineup. And I really want to dig in on, or I wanted to dig in on Isaiah Pacheco for the Chiefs. 22 carries last week. And he has the third best schedule the last 3 weeks of the year. He gets Houston, Seattle, and Denver. Now, Denver's not a great matchup, but Houston and Seattle are superb matchups for the running back. But then they just signed Melvin Gordon, and I just don't know. I feel like there's going to be a running back there. I still think it might be Pacheco, but if they're willing to give him 22 carries, the weather gets worse. I feel like it's every year with Kansas City. It's always a guy, whether it's Damian Williams. There's just always like a random running back that pops up, whether it's the NFL playoffs or whether it's fantasy playoffs. And with their schedule and with their offense and kind of lack of, explosive receiving kind of options. I know obviously Kelsey's one of the all-time greats in the pass catching department as far as getting open and run after the catch. But you saw that game last week. They were trying to establish the run there a little bit more. So I think Pacheco, and if it's not Pacheco, maybe it's Gordon, somebody there. I think you're going to want to get your hands on these Chiefs running backs. Maybe Gordon's available. Maybe somebody dropped him last week after he got cut. But I think before the end of the year, one of these Chiefs running backs is going to have something to say.
They're pretty tough to start. I mean, Pacheco the last 2 weeks has been okay, but there's really he got in the end zone. Kansas City is doing what I would do if I owned a team the last couple of weeks. Trading for Kadarius Toney, adding Melvin Gordon, why not? Adding Brian Edwards, why not? Adding Brandon Williams today, Ravens defensive interior lineman for a long time. Why not? Like, that's how you would do it in fantasy.
Right.
You would just try to get everybody you think you might need. You never have enough guys. And you and I are in Western New York. That's what worries me about the Bills. The Bills, the only kind of that the Bills have done is at running back. And I don't know, the best running back on the team is Duke Johnson, who doesn't play. They've got Nyheim Hines, who's going to catch the ball, but no. They've got James Cook, who's going to catch the ball, but no. Singletary is second on the team in receptions, who had the worst PFF receiving grade in the league. And now they're signing John Brown. So you can't be, I don't want to be two-faced about it. Signing John Brown is like, it's an act. So that's good. It's better than doing nothing. Had they not done it, you and I never would have thought of it as an option. But Beckham is like the big fish. And Von Miller said tonight that he'll be visiting with the Bills on Friday, but I don't think they have the capacity to sign him to years. I don't think they want to. I don't know that, but that's always sort of screamed Dallas to me. Anyway, the points about Melvin Gordon, I think probably it's insurance, and Pacheco and McKinnon are giving them really all that they need, which is, for them, hopefully not fumbling, moving the chains and whatnot. But they're not looking for home run hitters or anything like that. It's just one more way. a guy with experience who can catch the ball, who can play. Edwards is interesting the way they've sort of been grasping at wide receiver, but I like the attack mode of the Chiefs here, and Pacheco is fine. I mean, that's he has to, if he breaks one of these carries he gets, then that's awesome. But that hasn't really happened at all yet on a team with Mahomes and Kelsey and the weapons they have. You'd like to see that.
Yeah. And then two more guys quick. Again, these aren't guys. So one of them, Alvin Kamara, not so obvious league winner. So he's RB 15 on the season, which shocked me when I went and looked, because I just feel like he hasn't been, a high end RB2 all season. I think he's had one amazing game that's kept him up there as far as fantasy points. Gets Tampa this week in the first round. Not a great matchup, but see it. The Saints kind of own Tampa the last couple of years, so that could be an ugly game where he gets involved, and then he has a bye, and so this is a guy where, like, if you can somehow squeak into the 3-week race with Kamara on your team with not a great matchup and then a bye week, it's going to be hard to get through. Maybe you already have the automatic bid. He gets Atlanta, Cleveland, excuse me, and Philly down the stretch. That's the number one by far strength of schedule down the stretch. So he's not a guy that you're probably tinkering with putting in your lineup, unless maybe you do have like a Saquon Barkley and a Josh Jacobs later on. Like, well, do I have room for Barkley to start? He's a guy that I think the teams that can get into that 3-week race with Alvin Kamara, I think you're going to see some of those teams at the end, the top 5 teams have Alvin Kamara on their team.
I've got another screen share for you.
Oh boy, he's got one.
So that's a main event team on the left that I co-own with Louis G. That is already qualified.
Perfect. There it is. Music to your ears.
Let's scroll down.
Music. T. Higgins, Jacoby. Oh my gosh, Jacoby. Austin.
Slow down. You cannot be like, oh, he's got Jacoby. He's got Austin Hooper. He's got, just relax.
Relax. Pickens. You know how I feel about George Pickens. Okay.
Me too. I love him.
Oh,
this team's got Trey McBride,
Marquise Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd. Oh yeah. Gino.
It doesn't have Richie James, but it's still good.
Oh God. The stories.
Richie James. I love it.
Keeps him alive. He's running so pure. And then I have one more, and then we got to get through this quick because I'm going on the GOAT district soon here.
Oh yeah.
That's right. We got the GOATs tonight.
What time is that on?
That's 9 p.m. tonight.
Is it on TBS? Is it on at 9:05?
Right.
Is it 9:05 or is it 9 sharp?
Set your dial 9 p.m. TBS right after Family Matters and Full House. DJ Moore, number 1 wide receiver schedule down the stretch. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Tampa Bay, all good weather games because they're either at home or they're in a dome. He's been great with everybody this year but Baker Mayfield. So I think he's going to be absolutely fine down the stretch. He was fine last year when he didn't have Baker Mayfield. So I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to be, hey, do I put him in my lineup? I mean, you're not cutting him, obviously. Is this a guy I can trust? I think you're going to want to get him into your lineup the last 3 weeks with those matchups. I've got a ton of DJ Moore. Hopefully I can get through with him to the 3-week race. I've got a lot of him in Kentucky, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. So hopefully he can help me win a bunch of money there.
I love that you were so quick on the TBS lineup. For me, that's always CBS, Summerall, and Madden, because this is our age difference.
Sure.
Late in the 4 o'clock CBS game every week, they'd have that promo up for what's on after the game.
Okay.
After football, 60 minutes, seen at its usual time on the West Coast.
Yep.
Then the CBS Sunday night movie. That's my niece.
That's my
starring
a river
Alan Thicke, Shakira, Bobby Knight, and in the role he was born to play, Kenan Thompson. Just like the names were always these random TV movie names. And I saw Madden one time on an NFL Films thing make fun about how, I forgot. I left it out. I left it out of the bit. 60 minutes and then an all new episode of Murder, She Wrote. And
that's right.
And Madden would make fun of how long Summerall would pause between Murder and She Wrote because there was that comma. And then Murder, She Wrote. Then the CBS Sunday Night Movie, That's My Niece. That's whatever, just like this most ridiculous concept of a movie. Yes. Love that.
When I think 60 minutes, I think of they 60 minutes and then
the clock
tick, tick, tick for like 60 minutes. I feel like it's sitting there.
They would always say, they still do, seen at its usual time on the West Coast.
Yep, on the West Coast.
No confusion. You don't want anybody to be confused on the West Coast. What time it is?
Wait,
when is 60 minutes on?
Don't gotta miss it. ML asks, what do you guys think for Brandon Ayuk weeks 15 to 17 championship rounds against Seattle, Washington, and the Raiders? Fine. Yeah, you're starting Niners, especially, Ayuk's been their number one receiver down, the last month. So yeah, I think again, he's probably going to be in that range for you where you've got to make some tough decisions, but I would certainly lean towards him. Losing Elijah Mitchell, I think helps everybody because he was kind of the piece that came in. Like I was the guy like, hey, hold Elijah Mitchell because he could be a factor. Well, he was a factor. And of course, more injuries to him, but yeah, you're going to want to start your Niners down the stretch.
Would you start Ayuk over Debo this week? Yes. Maybe not without Mitchell. Depends on McCaffrey too. McCaffrey, we don't know.
I can tell you that the projections, and I haven't looked at this, so don't kill me, Draft Shark. But the projections will probably favor Ayuk, but I just feel like there's a squeaky wheel. Like it happened to Debo 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like he was quiet for 2 weeks, then he absolutely exploded. I think there's a squeaky wheel. Like, hey, we got to get this guy more involved. Now we've got Elijah Mitchell out, so maybe Debo gets more involved in the running game too, which he hasn't been. So. But the projections, I'm sure, will favor Ayuk.
When are you going to read the Shark Bites?
I know. I do read the Shark Bites. You guys are killing. One time I don't read the Shark Bites. Unbelievable. These guys.
Read the Shark Bites.
Unbelievable.
All right, everybody. Good luck in the first FFPC playoff week. Otherwise, important weeks in regular seasons. Follow us on Twitter at Shope Talk, at Adam_Krautwurst. Good luck in the high stakes playoffs. And we will see you next week, Tuesday night, probably. Usually we bounce around, but probably Tuesday night. Follow at DeepEndFF1 to find out for sure. Thanks for watching and listening. Powered by Draft Sharks. We're the Deep End. Mike and Adam. Good night.
See you guys.